Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to dive into how to set up a functional home and a small business network. I'll be using EVNG to demonstrate how to configure key network components like VLANs, DHCP, DNS, NAT, and IP basics. But before we dive into the demo, I want to show you this. A physical FortiGate firewall. If you've never seen one up close, this is your chance to get familiar on how does it look, what the ports do, and why it's such a powerful tool to secure your network. Now, it's a compact device if you see, but it's incredibly powerful for both home and small business networks. Now, here's what you'll notice. At the front, we have multiple Ethernet ports. They're used to connect devices like switches, access points, or even your ISP modem or router. Now, each port can be assigned different roles like internal network, LAN, DMZ, or internet-facing WAN. And then you have a console port used to CLI, and you have some USB ports in case you don't have internet connectivity and you want to upgrade your firmware onto the box. Now, on the back, you'll notice it's a power port and a cooling vent. Now, FortiGate devices are designed to run reliably 24/7. So whether you're handling a physical hardware or using a virtual device in EVNG, the principles really remain the same. Now, in case you don't have a FortiGate on hand, at hand, don't worry. We'll be using EVNG to simulate the same environment, and I'll show you step by step how to configure everything. And to wrap it all up, I'll log into this physical FortiGate to show you the configurations are practically identical. Now, whether you're working with hardware or a virtual setup, the beauty of EVNG is that it lets you practice and test configurations even when you don't have these physical devices. So let's start building.
If you look at this diagram that I have in front of me here, this could be a basic home or a small business network setup. Now, don't worry if you're very new to networking. My goal is to try and give you a very high level of what each piece does. There are a lot of videos online or a lot of material that explains you these things in simple. But if you have any questions, you can always put it in the comment section and I can try and answer them for you. In this diagram, we have the LAN, which is the local area network, which is our internal network. I have employees, I have guests, and I have a server, which is a network access storage where I'm just storing stuff. Could be a file server, could be any kind of server here. Home networks and business networks, you must be thinking, so what about Wi-Fi? Well, you can have two different SSIDs saying one is employee, one is guest, and that solves the exact same problem. I don't have Wi-Fi in this mix right now. Maybe that is something for the future. Next time we can try that. And if I want to break it down, the employee devices, which are here, are on VLAN 10. Now, these are computers for people who are working in the company or your home users. These are all in the same network segment, VLAN 10, which is 192.168.10.0/24 network. Now, they're keeping them in one VLANs means they can communicate among themselves. Guest devices, these are the visitors or the guest computers that are placed in VLAN 20 separate, 192.168.20.0/24. That keeps the guest separate from the employee traffic, helping protect the company network while still allowing guests to use their internet. Okay. And then you have the network attached storage, which is on VLAN 30. This storage device is for sharing files, maybe things like backup or shared documents. It's only on VLAN 30. Again, I'm given its own IP address here, which is 192.168.30.0/24. And I'm saying .100, which means I am actually doing a static IP address because that's going to be a server where I'll be storing stuff. So it needs to have a fixed IP address. That's the difference between a static and a DHCP. DHCP really means is you go and ask for a IP address, and that responsibility has been given to the. Now, all these different VLANs connect to a switch. If you look at it, that's in the middle. The switch can handle both access ports for regular devices like computers. So all these here, gigabit 01, 02, 03, these are all access ports. And the trunk ports, which can pass multiple VLANs through a single connection to allow multiple VLANs to be carried over one single cable to the FortiGate. Now, for the switch, network traffic goes to the FortiGate device, as you see here, which is often called as a firewall or a router. This acts as a gateway between our LAN and the WAN. Think of this as a bridge, like a bridge that you have to cross in order to go to the outer world. But after that bridge, there is a firewall which is going to inspect everything that's going out. This is also going to be handling DHCP, as I mentioned out, which is giving out IP addresses to each device. DNS, helping devices find their websites. Now, DNS is also another important concept in networking. Now, if I want to go to facebook.com or google.com, computers don't know how to go there. DNS comes to the rescue, which says, oh, if you want to go to the facebook.com, that means you need to go to this IP address. And that information, think of that as your yellow pages where you want to call somebody, and you have this yellow pages where you go and find that person's name, and then it if you want to talk to this person, that's the number you can call to talk to them, or any business you want to talk to. And then you have policies. Policies are rules about what can you do. In this case, what we're saying is the guests are allowed to go to the internet. The employees are allowed to go to the internet. Employees are also allowed to go to the server. The guests are not allowed to go to the server, and the server doesn't need to leave my home network. And then you have a default route, which is right here. Now think of as default route as my main door to my business or my home. So when I'm leaving to go outside my house or the world, the only way I'm going to be going out or leaving out will be through the main door. Finally, from the FortiGate device, a connection going out to the internet that you see here. And that's how all devices inside get access to the whole world or the internet. By setting up a network this way, we can keep our employees, guests, and storage traffic separately for security and organization as well. Now, making sure each VLAN has the right IP address via DHCP or static. Use a firewall to control traffic, set security rules, and route data to the internet. Now that's the big picture. Now we have multiple VLANs for different purposes, a switch to handle traffic inside the network, a firewall for security and internet access, and a clear structure so everything stays organized and protected. Now let's go ahead and look at some of the configs. What about the switch? Now, what I personally like to really do is I like to build my configs in Network++. This is the config I have. First, let me walk you through all these configs, all the 26 lines. And by the way, I'm going to put them in the description so you can copy it if you like. Host name, I'm saying a LAN switch, which is, again, by the way, this is the Cisco switch that I'm using. Then I'm creating 3 VLANs. I'm naming each of them. VLAN 10 is an employee, and I exit. I create another VLAN, VLAN 20, I name it guest, I exit. VLAN 30, name NAS, and then I can exit. Interface gigabit 1, which is a switch port access. It's an access port in VLAN 10, and I'm adding a description. This is optional. I don't need to make it, but I just like to do it. So when I'm looking at a config, I know exactly what this is. So this is connected to an employee, and I can exit now. And then I'm going into interface gigabit 01, switch port access VLAN 20, description connect to the guest, exit. And similarly, I have these 3 connected. And then is the gigabit 00, which is going to be the trunk, which we spoke about. So these 3 were the access. This is the trunk. And switch port, I'm saying encapsulation I'm going to be using is .1Q. Switch port mode is trunk. You will be trunk. And description, I'm saying trunk interface connected to the firewall. When you want to go and configure your switch, one way to do this would be to double click on this. And as you see that this thing will open up, I can go ahead and enable it. And I can see show VLANs. That will tell me or show me the VLANs that I've already created. And it's also showing me which ports are belonging to the, so employee belongs to VLAN 10, right? On port gigabit 01. 02 is your guest, 03 is your NAS. The way I do this is, I usually, let's say my switch had no config. So if you want, what I can do for you is, just for the sake of completion, is I can go right click and I can say wipe the switch. Yes, I want to wipe the node. Let's double click again and see if it's actually taken it out. Well, I'm going to stop, I'm going to start, and now let's open it up. And now the switch is coming on. And if you notice that it's starting from the beginning, it's all cleaned up right now, right? So we'll go through this. We'll make sure that the switch is ready. It's telling me certain ports are coming up because there are stuff that is connected to it and it's turned on. Perfect. Now, if you notice, the config has been kind of cleaned up because I don't see a switch config there. So if I enable, I say show VLAN, all that gone. Now you can go one by one if you like. As I told you already, I don't like doing that. So what I usually do is I have a config already that I've created. Control A, Control C. I've copied it now and I've explained to you what the config is. I go ahead and I say config T, and I go right click, and it is done. I've done my config, so I know how to do that. Last thing I'm going to do is I do WR, which says save the config. Let's go to show VLAN now. And if you notice, the VLANs are back. Okay, that's pretty much what it is from a switch perspective. Let's go on to the Fortinet. If you want to find Fortinet's IP address, what you got, I've shown you that in the previous videos. I'll do it again if you like. You double click on it, you go diagnose, IP address list, hit enter, and it tells you that I am using 192.168.136.136. Okay, and that's exactly what I have done. So I'll close my session right now here, and I'll open it again in front of you so you see it. 192.168, and it is 136.136. That should give me the firewall. I'm in the firewall now. Usually when you are working on the lab, one tip I want to give you is you will be, booted out of the firewall again and again. So what I do is I like to go to system and I like to go to settings. There is an option here which says ideal timeout. By default, this is 5 minutes, which means if you're not doing anything on the firewall for 5 minutes, I'll log you out, which is a good security feature if it's a production network. But since it's a lab, I like to keep it at 480 so it doesn't log me out if I start to go to my switch and do a config and I come back to firewall, it's still up, right? So that's the logic behind that. The first thing you want to do is once you're logged in is you want to start creating the interfaces. The way you do that is if you go to interfaces, you can click on create interface. Now I've already created the ones I want, but I can kind of show you that how would I do it. Say, let's create a fourth one that I don't need right now. I'll just call it a spare VLAN, and alias is test. Type is VLAN. And the interface that I'm connecting to is LAN port 2. Now, if you're wondering why I did that, is because if all these VLANs are coming into the port 2, all these 10, 20, 30, all these are coming into port 2. And then what VLAN ID I've given. So I have already chosen the 10, 20, and 30. I'll give it 40 this time. Role is LAN. Okay. Another thing you have to do here is you have to give it an IP address. IP address is because I'm going to keep that same idea. So I'm going to keep 192.168. This time I'm going to do 40.254. And I can either do 255.255.255.0 or I can just simply do /24. It will take it. Another thing is if you want to set up a ping and I want to test it. So let's say I want somebody to test the ping. So I'll just make sure I enable that ping. Another option is DHCP server. DHCP server is you are having an option of setting up a pool. What address? So I usually like to start at 101. And let's say if I need only 50, so I'll say I'll end at 150. And that's exactly what I've done for all the others, and I'll show you that in a minute. Okay? And once you've done that, you hit OK. And I think you're done. Now, if you go at the LAN port, you'll notice that I have all of these connected. So employee, let's go employee and edit and see what I've done there. I named it employee, alias is employee, VLAN 10. I can change all that if I want. IP address I've given the same that in the same range. I'm just using 10, 20. I'm just corresponding this IP to the VLAN that I'm going to pick here, right? Range, same thing I did, starting from 101 to 150. And I'm only giving 50 because I don't think so my network has more than 50. So why bother, setting up the whole range there? All right. And then that's pretty much about it. Another thing I want to do is once I've created all the VLANs, so I have on this firewall, I have created all the VLANs. The next thing I want to create is I want to create a static route. Static route is that everything goes out has to go to this IP here, which is 192.168.100.1. The example I said is if I want to leave to the whole world, I need to go through my main door. And that's exactly what I'm going to do here. Okay, so let's go back to the firewall. And let's go back to our static route. And if you notice, what I have here is I'm saying 0.0.0.0 slash, that means everything. What's your interface? Port 4. Port 4, that's the port I'm using to go out, right? And then you can set up as dynamic, or you can specify. Now, dynamic automatically picked up that. If you want to specify, which means you want to type it yourself, either or works. And then you say, okay, that part is done. Now, another option is your DNS. Now, if you look at DNS, it's already picking up DNS here, which are fine. Now, if you want to give it a specific DNS, you can specify, and again, you can give a certain DNS if you like here. Let's say if you wanted to add something here, let's say you wanted to add a 1.1.1.1, you can absolutely do that. That's not a problem. It will take it. Okay, all that is doable. Now, why do I need DNS? So that I can resolve my web addresses into actual IP range. Most important part is the policies. So if you go to policies, and if you go to firewall policies, if you haven't have one, you only will see this, the implicit deny, which means by default, I'm denying everything. I don't allow anything at all. I need to create a couple. Which ones should we create? First of all, I want the employees. Let's start from the employees. So what is the employee supposed to do? The employee is supposed to go to the internet and supposed to access the server. Okay, so let's do that. So employee to the internet is basically employee going out to the internet port. Source, I can pick specifically, or I can just simply say all, which I'm saying all in this case, and I'm saying okay. The second one that I've done in here is to the NAS, where I'm saying employee to NAS. Again, I'm saying all, and I'm making sure it's accepted, which means it's allowed. Now, you can schedule stuff, which means is I don't want people to do backups during the day, for example. If that's the case, you can always say that it's not allowed at so-and-so time, and it's only allowed from so-and-so time. And now this is same thing is true for an employee or a guest. Let's say if it's your home network, you don't want your kids to access the internet after, say, 10 p.m. So that's how you would set it up, okay? Where you go to schedule, instead of always, you can change that to whatever you think is right? So instead of all day, I can say what's the start time, what's the stop time, days, and then you can say okay. Okay, that's where you'll apply those controls. Let's go ahead and do some testing. So what I have done here is I have used these Linux images and connected to them. So right click, node, I'll show you once more which ones I'm picking up. I'm picking up Linux, and I'm using the Linux Tiny Core. Okay. In the previous videos, again, I've shown how to do it. Now let's start with the employee. Let's go to the employee. And if you go to the employee, this is the employee that I had already up and running. First thing I'm going to do is I will do a if config. And if you notice that it's saying I have 192.168.10.101. That's the first IP address that was part of the DHCP. So I didn't set up an DHCP here. A static IP address here. I got one from the firewall. And now if I can ping the firewall first, 192.168.10.254, I am able to ping it. If I want to ping the internet from here, I can ping it. And obviously, I want to ping my server, which is 30.100. I've statically assigned that IP address, and I can ping it as well. And I'll show you how I did that. And I can browse. I can go to facebook.com. I can go to CNN, and I can go to Google. Now, just to make sure this is working, we can try another website here. I can say bing.com. That should show up as well. See, the Bing showed up. Now, in the meantime, let's look at our other computer here, which is the guest. Now, guest should be able to go to the internet, right? Guest should be able to go to the internet, but not to the server. So let's validate that. So if I go and ping the internet, yes, I can ping the internet. I am able to go to 8.8.8. But if I ping my server, which is 192.168.30.100, it doesn't go there. How that? Guest is allowed to go to the internet, but guest is not allowed to access the VLAN 30, which is the NAS. So that is taken care of. Now let's look at the actual NAS device. Let's say, how do I create that DHCP address. So this is where you, let's say, make it. So if you click on this control panel here, it has an option of network. When you click on network, that's where it shows up. So this is where I was able to assign the IP address. So I'm saying, no, I want you to assign this IP address. And this is where I assign the IP addresses. Okay. And here's a gateway. Everything is right here. So let's assign it an IP address. So do you want it to use an IP address? No. DHCP, I want to give you an IP address, which is 192.168.30.100. And this is the gateway, and I'm applying it. So that's how you assign a Linux machine like this a physical IP. Now, one more thing I want to give out is this. If I want to make sure that this configuration just I did should not go away, I can type a command, which is file tool dot show sh-b. That will save it. Okay, so you don't lose your static configuration that you just had. That's just another way of doing it. Now we'll make sure that's taken care. So we've done all the testing. Obviously, you learned all this, correct? The last thing I want to show you is you can view all this on your FortiGate. So if you go on your FortiGate, right, you have a dashboard that has FortiView options. So first of all, I can go to the dashboard and I can say status. I can add widgets. I have added DHCP, where DHCP, you see that there's an employee there, there's a guest there. This is what the IPs it was given out by the firewall. You can see all that. You can see FortiView policies, that what policies were being used. You notice that guest to internet was used, employee to internet was used. These are all used. FortiView sessions, it's showing you all the sessions that are in place right now, right? It's also showing you the applications. It has a lot of options that lets you view what's going on. Pretty powerful, I must say, in terms of looking at what's happening right now. So you have good visibility into what your network and devices are doing with this. Perfect. Now, as promised, what about logging into that real world firewall? Should look the same. So in order to do that, what I've done is I personally like using this TerraTerm software because it picks up things automatically. So that's what I've already installed. So let's say if I want to go to TerraTerm, so I'll go to TerraTerm and I'll go ahead and install it. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward. Nothing very fancy about that software. And it's done. Now let's go ahead and log in. Now what I have done is, main problem that most people run into is they don't know which COM port to use. This software usually picks up by itself. So I have a cable connected to on the console port into the USB port of my laptop, and it's picked that up, and I say, okay. And I'm in the firewall right now. I can say admin and the password that I set up, and I know I'm in. I will do the same, diagnose, IP, address, list, so that I know which IP address did my firewall get. If you notice, it got this IP address. Now, let's log in. And see if I can get in. I just realized that that had some pre-existing config, so I'll have to kind of reset the firewall. But let me show you something. What I did at the back end is, so let's say if you got a new FortiGate out of the box, it has some default configuration. It usually has a 192.168.1.99 that you can access it. What I did is I connected a port from the FortiGate to my laptop. And now on my laptop, I'm going to go ahead and give this port an IP address so that I can be in the same range. So I can give it 1.10, and I can say I want to go to the firewall, for example. Okay. Now let's see if I can. So first way you want to do that is you want to go ahead and run a ping test. I can ping it now. So if I can ping it, which means I should be able to reach it. Now let's open up a browser, go 192.168.1.99. If it doesn't like it, we'll make sure it's HTTPS port, because sometimes by default HTTP is actually disabled. So make sure you put HTTPS in front. It will give you this error because of the certification that's on the device. Certificate is not itself assigned. And now I'm in the real firewall, and if you look at it, it's very much same like what we have been looking for so far. I'm going to say later, and I'm in. Same idea. What I was trying to show you before, I can go into systems, and I can say, the first thing we did here was the settings and say how long you want to, all that stuff still exists. That hasn't changed if you look at it, right? Idle timeout. This is the setting I was starting talking to you about in the beginning of the video. I can go to network, interfaces, start. This is my physical interfaces right now. I can start creating them exactly the same way that what I did before. I can create a VLAN here, call it employee. I spelled it wrong. Spell it different here. Interface is internal. We haven't fixed these. What I can do is internal, I can start to assign them as LAN if I want to. I haven't done that. So that's the first thing you would do. And then you'll start to, so let's say interface 3 is going to be the LAN. And now internal is LAN. Okay. And I can give it an IP address here, similar to what I was giving before. Nothing different there, right? /24. So if you notice, nothing really changes. If I'm in the firewall really, or I'm in the EVNG, so that just gives you confidence that doesn't matter if you're doing these labs in your EVNG or in front of a firewall, it's the same thing. So I'll leave it there that, okay, yes, I need to have a value. So yes, it is VLAN 10. Sure, okay, right? And then now if I'm talking about policies here, if you look at it, what kind of policies are there? Now there are some already created, but at the bottom it was this one. So usually when you open up a firewall, it will usually come with just the implicit deny, which says I deny everything. Okay, just remember that. And then you have the dashboard. Status shows you the same stuff, and you can add the widgets if you like. If you want to see, okay, DHCP there, DHCP shows up. You want to see the interface bandwidths, you want to see some 40 sources. All these can be brought in to your dashboard. So when you log in, you see all that right here. Okay.
This should give you the confidence that whether you're using a physical device or a virtual one, the skills you learned today are directly applicable to the real world. Now that's it for today's lab. Now we've covered the basics of building a functional and a secure network using FortiGate and Cisco. Now whether it's for your home or a small business, understanding VLANs, DHCP, DNS, NAT, and IP basics is the key to design a reliable network. Now if you found this helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next video in this series. Now drop your questions or ideas in the comments. I'd love to hear how you're using EVNG to learn and grow your skills. See you in the next video. Bye for now.